Hey everyone, it's Vladimir. I'm going to make a video today about some advanced stuff in Patran. Well, it's not that advanced, but unless you consider yourself an expert, I'm pretty sure you'll find this quite useful. Basically, I'm going to walk through a lot of things that you would do in Patran when working on the project, and if you bear with me for however long this video is, I'm pretty sure you'll find it quite useful. Now, one thing to note is I'll be doing a lot of clicking around here and there and whatever. If you're multitasking, you'll probably miss something and you'll waste hours trying to figure out what you missed. So I highly recommend you watch this video by itself and not while doing something else. So I guess with that we can begin. I'm going to create a new Patran project. Let's see, I'm going to make a new folder. Oh, notice my little letters appearing. My mouse clicks are also supposed to appear, but unfortunately for some reason they've been glitching lately, so I'm not sure if that's going to work or not. Oh, and notice I'm playing some classical music in the background. So, some of the most important things on this front window that just came up is to notice that your global edge length is 10. As far as I'm aware, for most non-advanced users, you want to keep this larger than your longest dimension. So for example, in our project, our longest dimension is 9 inches, so 10 would be sufficient for that. Another useful thing is double-clicking this window to make sure that it's fitting all the time when you're working. And another thing is, you notice I have all these buttons here that you don't have on your screen. Let me show you how to add them. So before I show you how to add them, let me remove one of them just so I could show it to you appearing. So I'd right-click this button and then remove from Quick Access Toolbar. And then right up here where you have where it was showing you all these buttons, you can pick the one that you want. So for example, the one I took out was a top-down view. So I can right-click it and then do Add to Quick Access Toolbar. I'd recommend setting up your toolbar before continuing with any of the other parts of the project, because this can get quite useful, especially the wireframe versus the smooth shaded buttons. The zoom in buttons are also nice, but sometimes they tend to make your viewport look like it glitched. You know, it's not really a glitch, but most people will think it is, and you'll probably be tempted to just close your entire Patran and start over when you see it happen. So I wouldn't really recommend using them too much. I'll show you later another way to zoom that's a whole lot better, actually. And then the other buttons that are useful is this Fit to View and Refresh Graphics button, which can be found here and here. And these two, yeah. Okay, so alright, without further ado, let's begin. One of the things that I don't like about Patran is this blue background, because a lot of the wireframes and stuff like that we're going to be working with are also blue, and this makes it really hard to see. So to fix this, you can go to Preferences, and in Preferences choose Graphics. And under Graphics you have this Viewport color. You can either click this color here and choose the one that you want and hit Apply, or I prefer to go to Background Effects. Here it lets you choose two different colors and do a sort of transition gradient. So for example, green and black, and then you could do it like this, or I prefer one of these horizontal or vertical versions. These look a little bit more interesting, and you can play around with the colors a little bit more, although these particular two don't really make much of a difference, so let's choose something else. And if you don't like one being on top of the other, just flip them around and then go like this. When you're done, hit Apply. I'm going to make it a little less hard on the eyes and choose something like, let's go for teal and white. Let's see how that looks. Well, the white seems very bright in Patran, so maybe I'll do teal and sort of a lighter blue. Yeah, this looks very nice. Oh, actually I really love this color combination. Let's keep that. Okay, so I'm going to try to approach this very similarly to how you'd approach your project, but I'm not going to do the exact same part just so there's no sort of cheating or whatever you want to call it. Anyways, so let's go to geometry. And in order to make a part similar to the one that we had in the project, we're going to create a when you click on geometry, it gives you this little window where you could choose to do stuff. I don't use any of the buttons up here most of the time. I prefer to pick the buttons that I want from the little drop down menus here. So first we're going to create a surface. So to create surface, and then the way we create it, we're going to use the XYZ coordinates. Okay, so one of the most annoying things about Patran, and although sometimes it is quite useful, is this auto execute. So make sure to always turn that off unless you know exactly what you're doing. And for some things we are going to keep it on. It's going to make our lives a lot easier. But anyways, for now we could turn it off. So the two most important boxes here are the origin coordinate list here and the vector coordinate list here. So origin tells you the point from which you're going to be defining where this surface is going to be. So I'm just going to keep it at the origin right now at 0, 0, 0. And the vector component is going to tell you the dimensions of this surface. So for example, with it being 1 and 1, it's going to have one length in the x dimension, in the x direction, and one length in the y direction, and no length in the z direction. So it's going to be a surface. If you put a length in the z direction, I'm pretty sure it's just going to like sort of bend it or something like that. Well, not necessarily bend it, but I mean it'll angle it. It won't actually make it 3D because we defined it as a surface. So those are the two most important things, but another thing to keep an eye on is the surface ID list. So surface ID of 1 means that as soon as it creates the surface will be called surface space 1. This is very useful for when we're going to be having a lot of surfaces or things later on in the project, and so I would just keep an eye on this. The most important thing is to keep an eye on what the maximum surface ID is, because that'll help you delete, like, for example, you'll be able to delete surfaces 1 through however many you have if you know what the maximum number is. Like if you know that your maximum number is 7, you'll be able to very easily delete surfaces 1 through 7 if you need to. If you don't know what the maximum is, I guess you could do something like 1 through 100, and usually it doesn't give you an error, but I've had it give me an error before, so that's a little finicky. I'm not exactly sure what I did that time to give me an error, but anyways. So just keep an eye on that. Okay, let's create the surface. So we're going to keep it at 0, 0 just for now. And let's see. We'll give it a dimension of 1 in the x and let's say like 5 in the y. Okay, so instantly we see this surface appeared. I don't really like how it looks right now because it's just a wireframe, so I'm going to make it solid using the solid shortcut that I added for myself up here. So now I'm going to show you some really cool display manipulation things that you're going to find so useful if you don't know about them. So first I'm going to hold down the click wheel, not scroll it, just hold it down, and then moving my mouse around the table, I'm actually able to rotate the part. This is one of the most useful things that you'll probably run into because it saves you from having to just be fixed to particular views like these isometric and stuff like that views. Another really useful thing is if you hold down the shift key, so I'm holding down the left shift, and then hold down the mouse button, the middle mouse button, or the scroll wheel, and then move your mouse around, you can see that you're panning your object around. Now it doesn't really look very useful now, but if you zoom in onto your part, this becomes one of the single most important things for navigating around it. Otherwise, you'd have to zoom in, zoom out, zoom in, zoom out in order to get to where you want to go. But this allows you to move around very smoothly along your object. And of course, the last important thing is how do we actually zoom without using these buttons. To do that, you can hold down the control button, then hold down the mouse wheel, or the middle mouse button, whatever you want to call it, and then move your mouse forward and backwards to zoom in and out. So you can see that this is going to be very useful when you're working on your project and having to jump around from face to face as you're adding fillets or holes or whatever else you want to add to it, which we will all cover, by the way, in this little mini tutorial. Okay, so now we got this face and it's flat, so we want to make it into a solid object. The reason I prefer to have the reason I prefer to use these manipulation controls as opposed to using the top ones is because it's very intuitive to go, hey, I want to create something. What I want to create is a solid, and then choose the way I want to create it. Now, one of the ways to create a solid would be to do the XYZ thing, which is probably quite convenient. Yeah, I'm sure this is very convenient. This is just like making a surface. But I wanted to show you the surface way of doing it, just so you have that in your toolbox and you're able to work with it very easily. And because there's also a tiny little catch that you have to be aware of when you're doing it as a surface, which I'm going to show you how to deal with. So let's select the method as extrude. Extrude means you're going to take a surface and you're going to extrude it out as a solid. Very similar to SolidWorks, pretty much. Now, of course, you're going to be met by a very confusing menu, as always in this program, but I think it's going to be fine. So let's, we want to do this left one here for tetramesh as opposed to an iso mesh, because later when we're actually meshing it, we're only going to use tetramesh. We're not going to use iso mesh. So make sure that this left one is selected. Again, keep an eye on the solid ID list. This is quite important. And the other things that are important is the surface list, of course. Oh, whoops, I almost forgot to uncheck this auto execute. Let's uncheck that before we forget. So the important thing is the surface ID list and this translation vector. The translation vector actually tells you which direction your object is going to be extruded in. So notice right now it shows you that it's going to be extruded 1 unit in the X direction. Now if we go over here and look at our coordinate system, X is pointed to the right. So this object is actually going to be extruded towards the right. We don't want to do that. We actually want to extrude it in the Z direction. Whether it be positive or negative doesn't really matter. I'm going to extrude it negatively because that just seems more natural for me. But whichever way you prefer, you can do it that way. So let's change this to be -1, so it extrudes in the Z direction. In a negative Z direction, excuse me. Alright, so for the surface list, if you remember your surface ID, you can simply type surface1. I usually find this most convenient in Patran because I know exactly what surface I want to work with and I don't have to fumble around trying to select the right thing. But if you wanted to select it, there are 2 ways to do it. One is clicking on it, that's the easiest way. But another convenient way, which one of my friends showed me, is you can select it by doing this. So basically click and drag and you'll around the object and you can select it that way. That works most of the time and it'll probably be quite convenient for you as well. So you can do it either way you want, but I think that's good. These other things here, sweep will allow you to make your object wider or narrower at the end. That might be useful for if you're punching a hole in something. So you could, I guess you could play around with that. But we don't really need to do that for this project unless you want to get fancy about the way you put your holes and whatever. Okay, anyways, so I'm just going to hit apply, and voila, it created it. So here's our object, and I actually don't like that I extruded it 1 inch because it makes it square. So I'm going to go up here. This right here is the undo button. Single most useful button in the entire program, probably. If you try to undo using Control-Z, you'll probably run into some weird results. So I would recommend just using this button all the time. There we go. And instead of extruding it 1 in the Z, I'm going to extrude it just a half. There we go. And now it's visually clearer that which side is which, pretty much. Because before, otherwise, it'll get confusing which side is X, which side is Z. Well, I mean, you can always look at the navigator, I guess. But anyways, I think this is a little better. And my music is annoyingly loud, so I'm going to turn it down a little bit. And of course, the moment I turn it down, it turns off completely. Anyways, so now we made this thing. Alright, the question is, how do we shape it into something that looks, you know, special? Like in our project, there's a very particular design that we're following. Okay, we're going to do that by actually creating another surface, extruding it into the object, and then using the Boolean operation to subtract the 2 from each other. If that just blew your mind, don't worry, I'm going to walk you through it. Okay, so now in this up here in the controls, we want to select surface again. and we're going to create it using XYZ. Now this time I'm not going to use 0, 0 as my origin. I'm going to try to put this object right here, so I cut it out in a sort of a U shape kind of thing. I'm sorry, not a U shape, a C shape kind of thing. Okay, so let me put this origin at 0.5 in the X and 0.5 in the Y, and that way it'll be right here exactly in the center. And I'm going to extrude it half an inch to the right. Well, inch or centimeter doesn't matter because Patran doesn't have units, but whatever. So I'm going to extrude it half an inch or whatever to the right. And instead of extruding it 5 up, I'm only going to extrude it 4 units up. That way, on both the top and the bottom, I'm going to have a half an inch of clearance. Notice this is surface 2 now in the surface ID list. Okay, apply and viola. Another way to create a surface, if you don't want to set the origin manually, you could actually set the origin to a point by selecting a point. Now this has no use for me at the moment because it will just create the same exact point, the same exact surface again. But that could be useful for some of the things you're going to be doing in the project. I saw one of my friends doing that and I was kind of blown away. It was pretty cool. So yeah, apparently you could put points into these coordinate lists. Okay, alright, so what we want to do now is we want to create another solid from this new surface. And basically keep everything the same, except change this to surface 2. Now this is where it's really useful for knowing what your surfaces are, because I could just type in 2 right here, as opposed to having to fumble around on this little diagram trying to choose the right one. Which here is pretty easy because it's big, but you can see how if the surfaces were very small, you'd have to be zooming in and stuff, you know. That's a pain in the butt. So here we just hit apply. Okay, notice it created this other surface, this other solid inside of our first solid. And obviously we can't see it very well, but if we go to this wireframe, which is one of the other buttons that I told you to put on here, we can now very clearly see that one solid is inside of the other. Okay, I'm going to go back to the shaded view again. So now they're inside of each other. The question is, how do you tell Patran to subtract one solid from the other? Alright, well that's very simple. Again, in this menu up here, I would have no idea where to find it in the top bar. I just find everything in the menu here because it's just so much better. So here, instead of creating an object, now we're going to edit one of them. So we select edit. We want to edit a solid. And the thing we want to do to it is use the Boolean operation. The Boolean operation is the thing that allows you to subtract them from each other. Now you notice here we have 3 different ways to make a solid. We can either add 2 together, or subtract one from the other. This is what we're going to be doing now. Or take the difference between the 2 of them and only keep that. So we want to use one of the objects to subtract from the other. So again, uncheck the auto execute. Here we have 2 things. Target solid, that's going to be our big solid. And the subtracting solid here is going to be the second one that we created, solid 2. So now if we hit apply, we notice it just cut out our solid. Now you're looking at this and you're seeing, well, wait a moment. You said it cut out the solid, but yet I'm seeing this weird little thingy here. Don't worry about that. That's just our surface. We haven't removed our surfaces yet, so that's why they're still hanging around. So if you see this on your project, don't freak. It's okay. That's actually exactly the way it's supposed to work. If you created your solids using the XYZ coordinates instead of using a surface, I'm pretty sure you wouldn't run into this issue. No, I know for 100% you wouldn't run into this issue because you wouldn't have any surfaces to begin with. So now the question is, how do we get rid of these surfaces? Well, very simply, again, in this menu right here, instead of edit or create, we choose delete. Very simple. Now, by default, it opens up to this thing that's able to delete anything you want. I really don't like it. This thing is kind of I don't know, it's got too much power almost in my opinion. So I prefer to limit it by telling it to do only one thing or another. So here I selected surface, and now we could type in surface, and alright, we can either delete the surfaces one at a time by doing just surface 1 and then deleting it and doing surface 2 or deleting that, or we can tell it to delete both surface 1 and 2 by doing surface 1 space 2. This will delete both of them. If we had more than 2 surfaces, we could just type them in like this, or more conveniently we could do 1 colon whatever number of surfaces we have, like 5. That would automatically delete everything from 1 to 5. Since we only have 2, I'll just do 1 colon 2. Okay, now I click that and you notice nothing really happened, but actually it did. If we look on the chart, we notice that all the edges of our solid are white except for these ones. Black edges are edges that have just been, black edges imply that something has just been deleted. So this edge right here is about to disappear as soon as we hit the refresh graphics button. So here it is, I'm going to hit it, boom, it just disappeared. Also, when you rotate the screen, it will also disappear automatically. So as soon as you rotate it, it'll go away as well. But I just wanted to show you the refresh graphics button, just so you know it's there. Because sometimes you don't really want to rotate your view. Your view could be in a very nice position. You don't want to screw it up. So that's why it's convenient to be able to hit the refresh graphics button. Okay, so now we got our fancy looking beam here. And I'm just going to jump the gun, and before we make any forces or anything like that, I'm going to show you how to put holes in this thing. Putting holes in something is kind of straightforward. I'm sure there is a better way to do it. I prefer to do it very similarly to the way we cut out this shape just now. So we're going to go to create, solid. Well, I normally create solids using surfaces, but now that I saw this XYZ option under solid, I'm actually curious to try it, so I'm going to try it now. So we do solid XYZ, and let's say I want to put a hole right in this spot right here. So that would probably be something like 0.25 by 0.25, so 0.25 into X, 0.25 into Y. And I want the size of the hole to be, okay, so this piece right here is exactly 1/2 inch. So I put that origin at 0.25. So actually I'm going to knock this back a little bit, just to 0.2, so that my dimensions could be 0.1 by 0.1. And okay, so having it be like this will now mean that that it's 0.25 from here, 0.1 over, and which leaves me another wait, I just got myself confused. Oh, sorry, it's 0.2 over, then 0.1, and then that leaves me another 0.2 to the next edge, so it's exactly in the center. Okay, perfect. Sorry, just getting myself a little confused there. And remember, the depth is 1/2 inch, so we could set it to 1/2 inch. But I think because we're going to use this in a Boolean operation, it's going to disappear anyway, so it doesn't really matter what this width is, as long as it's deep enough to go through your whole solid. And my music got really loud again. Excuse me, as I turn it down. Okay, so alright, I think we're ready now. I don't want to auto execute, so let's hit apply. Boom. Whoops. I made a noob mistake. I accidentally extruded in the wrong direction. Yes, before I was extruding in the negative Z direction. So let's use the undo button up here again. Undo that. And I actually don't like how small it looks. So I'm going to knock this back to 1.5, I mean. 1.5. Okay. So that means it added another... so now this is going to be 2, I believe. Yes, it's going to be 2, exactly right. Okay. And we're going to apply that. Oh, forgot to make this negative again. Okay, here we go. It's negative now. Alright, so hit apply. Now we see this object is inside the other one. hit wireframe, there it is, we see it inside there. Okay, so now we're going to go to create, edit, and we're going to choose solid and Boolean. Okay, perfect. And so now we're going to do solid 1 and solid 2. Now hey, guess what? When we did the Boolean operation before, this solid that was right here that used to be solid 2 got deleted automatically by the Boolean operation. So when we created this solid over here, I forgot to mention it, but if you look in your solid ID list, it was actually back to being number 2 again. So in fact, we don't need to change any of these values here because they're exactly right. This is still solid 1 and this is solid 2. Perfect. Exactly what we want. And okay, so we put a hole here, and I actually realized that for some reason my my keyboard clicks aren't registering and showing up on your screen, so I'm just going to pause the video for a couple minutes and figure out why that's not working. Okie dokie. Okay, so I turned it back on. Now, I'm not sure, maybe my screen recording is interfering, so we're about to find out. Okay, no, it looks like it's still working, so hopefully it'll stay that way. Oh, it actually looks like it opened up 2 of them. That's funny. So I'm going to close the first one. Let's see if it's still working. Nope. Okay. Let's try this again. Alright, so... Alright, and I think I can close my... Okay, let's see. Okay, that looks like it's working, so hopefully it's going to continue working, but we'll see. Okay, so now we got this hole, right? Now, it's obviously a square hole, and for the project we'll probably prefer to make the holes round. So, I'm going to use my buttons to zoom in on it. And I'm actually noticing this is rather inconvenient being all the way in the center of the screen like that, but oh well. So notice I used the shift and the control buttons to zoom in and pan to get myself looking on this little figure right here. And now I'm just holding down the middle mouse button and rotating around. Okay, so we want to make this round, right? But it's square. But conveniently for that, we have the fillet tool. Well, actually it's not the fillet. It's called edge blend for solid objects as opposed to for surfaces. So for surfaces it's called fillet, but for solid objects it's called edge blend. So we can find it again under this edit menu. So under edit, solid, and instead of Boolean we can select edge blend. So here we have 2 types, either a constant radius fillet or a chamfer. Yeah, chamfer. Okay, so it's pretty simple. One thing to keep in mind is make sure this is set to just that one edge, because I had a friend accidentally set it to this, hit his project, and all the edges got blended, and it was just a little crazy looking. But so let's set it to this guy, uncheck the auto execute. Now the important thing is knowing what your radius is. Now in our case, I know that this is exactly 0.3 whatever units long. So in order to make this fillet, it's going to be exactly 1.5. Okay, and I'm going to select this edge. And notice it came up with this horrendous list of stuff. We're not actually going to use this. I'm going to show you how to not get this list, but I just want to explain what you're seeing. So let's look at this one for example. What we're seeing here is solid 1 dot 14. Now solid 1 means you're looking at solid 1. Dot 14 means you're looking at surface 14 in that solid. And then dot 1 means you're looking at the first edge on that surface. So that's how you're able to read these numbers. And the reason it never says edge or surface or anything like that is because edges and surfaces we don't have any edges and surfaces that currently exist here. Remember, we deleted all of those. So these are not real edges or surfaces, they're just parts of your solid that just happen to be edges or surfaces in the solid, but they're not themselves separately edges or surfaces. That's why they have this numbering system that allows you to figure out which one you're looking at. Although I was never able to completely comprehend exactly how the system works. So, like, for example, if I look at this, I would have absolutely no idea which edge it's talking about. I know it's an edge, and it's inside of surface 1. I mean, it's inside of solid 1. But exactly which edge, I would have no idea. So, in order to get around this issue, we actually do want to turn on auto-execute. This is like one of the only real times you're going to want to use auto-execute. Unless you're just a pro and know what you're doing and you're just like wah 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 like a Patran ninja or something like that. Anyways, so we do auto execute, and notice when as soon as I click this, it automatically does it for me and I don't even have to choose anything. Okay, but I noticed that this thing is actually incorrect, so my calculation of 1.5 was wrong. I guess the dimensions for this square must have been 0.2 inches instead of 0.3 like I thought. So that's no problem. I'm just going to go back and undo it. And let's just set this to 1 then. Okay, select this again. Oh yeah, that looks a whole lot better. Okay, so we'll rotate this a little bit. Notice how convenient that rotating button is. It's very good for choosing things. Boom, and now we have a circular hole. Yay! Alrighty. So, excuse me while I take a drink for a second. Okay, perfect. So we got a circular hole. Let me zoom out, just show you how it looks. Whoops. Okay, there we go. Ah, nice. It's almost looking like a handle. Now, you know what? I'm just going to take the liberty of adding a couple more fillets just, for coolness sake. Alright, let's do this one as 0.3. It's just, hey, you know what? Why not, Okay, let me zoom in on this again. I want to select this edge. Boom. Viola. Very nice. And now this edge. Boom. Very nice. And it just so happened that this 0.3 matches up very well with this other circle, so it actually looks quite professional. Okay, so now we made a part that has holes and stuff. Now we will probably want to put some boundary conditions on it and test it, right? Okay, so let me go back to this isometric view, and I'm going to hit center it and zoom it in and stuff. Okay, so now this looks good. Actually, you know what? Before we get too excited about going to loads and whatever, I'm just going to show you how to do this chamfer thing, because for the project, this is extremely useful. Or at least in my experience, the way I tried to do it, I found this quite useful. I'm sure you'll probably find another way to do it where you might not need this. You can do it with fillets just as well, but I personally like this because it offers me a little bit more of a degree of control over exactly how I do it. Notice that in a fillet, it's exactly symmetric all the time. But when we go to this chamfer, it lets me have an angle. So I'm able to basically control exactly what the slope of this chamfer is going to be. So just for kicks and giggles, I'm going to show you how to do this with the 45 degrees. I'm just going to make this 0.5 inches. Whoops. Okay, so now let's select this edge. Boom, there it is. See, that's very nice. Alright, but this is 45 degrees. Let's do something a little fancier. Let's set this to some other angle. Like, let's do 80 degrees. Now, before we do anything, let's not forget to undo that. Okay, now this will either work very beautifully or look horrible. And it all depends on the way your Patran made these surface directions. So, that probably made no sense at all what I just said, but you're about to see that this can go very horribly wrong. So just make sure you're watching your model closely, because sometimes the changes it makes aren't going to be noticeable, but they're going to be there. And be ready to click the undo button. So if done right, this is really awesome, but 50% of the time it's not going to work great. So you're going to have to tweak it a little bit. Alright, so I set this to 80. The offset is 0.5. Let's click this guy right here. Oh, perfect. It worked perfectly the first time. Alright, so what it did is, so the reason this works perfectly, and unfortunately I didn't get to show you a time when it fails. I'll have to find another place in the model where I can do that. Okay, so it worked perfectly. So the offset was 50, and then the angle that it used was 80 degrees. So the angle went between this horizontal line here and the line, this angled line. So this is 80 degrees. So that works perfectly. But the catch is, you never know which of these edges the offset is measured on. So we just happen to be lucky that the offset was measured along this edge. But if it were measured along this edge, then the chamfer would actually, instead of be projected under an angle going this way, it'll actually be projected under an angle going that way. So off in the X direction. And we don't want that. And actually, when you do it in your project, if you do that, you'll find that it goes all the way out to here, and then it hits the farthest point in our project, and it just cuts off. So basically what it ends up doing is just doubling the area of this front face. And we don't want to do that. And if your offset was very little, and your angle is a lot, you might not even notice a difference because it'll just offset it like that. Just a little tiny little thing that is probably not going to be noticeable to the uncareful eye. So that's why you should watch it very carefully. Like, hold your mouse over the apply button. Oh, I'm sorry, we're not using the apply button, we're using the auto execute. So just like when you're about to hit this button, make sure you're watching these areas to be sure that it doesn't do something wrong. So this now just happened very nicely, but if it were to do something bad, it might be hard to notice. So just keep an eye on that. But that is a very useful feature, and I made it seem kind of bad, but it's pretty useful. And just one quick other thing, as I set this to 0.5, which is the length of this segment right here. Don't necessarily have to do that. You could do something really cool, like set this to, let's say, 0.2. Let's knock the angle back a little bit. What's a good angle? Alright, let's do 50 degrees. Okay. Now, watch this. This is going to be pretty interesting. We can select this guy right here. So we created this. Oh, I don't like that. That's too small. No, 50 is too small. That's between 50 and 80 is 70. So let's go for 70. Although not exactly in the center, but whatever, close enough. Okay, so now we're going to select this. Okay, that looks better. Now we can see it a little bit better. Alright, the cool thing that I wanted to show you is that you can stack chamfers and, chamfers and, what are these? Fillets, yeah, fillets. So I had a chamfer, and now I got a fillet. Alright, so I'm just going to keep my settings the same, but you could play around with it if you want. Let's zoom in on right here. Alright, so now I'm going to add a a fillet on top of a chamfer. Wow. Now you see you can make some really cool sort of geometries with this. Okay, let me undo that. I'm going to make this radius a little bigger, I think, yeah. There we go. Now I can see a little better. Still kind of weak, but, good enough. Alright. So you see, you can make some pretty fancy, elaborate geometries for you to use in your project. Just very simply by stacking together some chamfers sorry, my brain is failing at the moment. And fillets. Yes, fillets. Okay. Okay, here we go. Alright, so we did that. Now let's just jump on ahead because we spent a lot of time here. Let's go to Properties tab. In the Properties tab, I actually, you know how in geometry I told you to use these guys all the time? In Properties, I haven't really gotten too fancy with it, so I just use the basic buttons. Okay, so first we're going to create an isotropic material. And let's just call this steel. Actually, you know what? I don't remember properties of steel off the top of my head, so I'm just going to call this some mat. There we go. Okay, that's better. Alright, so, and notice I use an underscore here. You might not have to do it, but I don't know, it just seems better inside the program. I don't really trust it completely by putting a space in there, so I just put an underscore and just, you know, for safety. Excuse me. Excuse me, I'm gonna get another drink. Too much talking. Okay, so the button I just clicked was input properties. So let's go to input properties. Let's give it an elastic modulus of something. I believe in our project, the elastic modulus of aluminum is 10,000 psi, or I'm sorry, 10 million psi, or 10,000 ksi. So I'm just gonna put 10 million, and for Poisson's ratio, I believe it was something like 0.3. Maybe 0.33 or 0.26, I don't remember exactly, something like that. Anyways, doesn't really matter. So I said, okay, we got this thing, so we gave it some properties. Material status, oh no, we don't need to do that. Okay, so the important thing is we gave it some properties. Oh, and density, yeah. Although our project doesn't give us density right away, you should definitely look it up online, because you'll see towards the end of when we're done doing all this stuff here, I'm going to show you how to very easily compute the mass of your object so that you can know how much mass you need to take away and stuff like that. Okay, so density, I don't know, let's make up a density off the top of my head, 0.85, I don't know, something like that. Actually, no, that seems quite low. I think density of water is like, actually I have absolutely no idea in English units what the density of water is, so let's just keep it at 0.85. Let's just pretend like that's actually a real density. Okay, so we got density, a elastic modulus, and a I'm sorry, we got an elastic modulus, a Poisson's ratio, and a density. Okay, getting ourselves confused. Okay, so now we hit apply, and notice that this sum material now appears up here. And if we click on it, it'll open up in some window. Okay, now we've seen in previous projects where we apply these materials to like beams and stuff like that. And for this project though, however, we're going to apply it to a solid. So this solid button's conveniently located right there. And now we got to give this thing a name. So let's just call it prop 1. Yeah, that's good. So property 1 and is going to be homogeneous. All these other stuff aren't really important. So here we can select input properties. Here's where we give it the material. Now you can either type the material name in yourself, or if you hit this little meshy thingy button, you get to actually choose the material you want. Boom. Just notice it does that automatically. And yeah, here we go. So it did that. And now the other important thing is select application region. And we can select members by either clicking or selecting solid 1, and then you hit add. Very important, don't forget to hit the add button. So now I notice it's right here in the list of application regions, and hit OK. Now when I was selecting it, it did something weird, made this little block here, so we can just go to refresh graphics and it'll go away. Alright, so now we set all this stuff, we hit apply, and notice the property 1 appears in our set list. And again, if you click on it, it'll pop up in a window that lets you edit it. Alright, so that's that. We just gave it our properties. Now let's give it some loading and boundary conditions. Now, in our project, our force was being applied at the top of the thing, which is fine, but I put a hole right here and I want to see how it functions with the hole. So I'm actually going to take this force by clicking the force right here and apply it to one of these faces here. So we want to create force and we want it to be nodal, so all these settings are fine. Let me call this force in the x direction, and it's going to be 1, force x1. You don't have to call it this way, I just prefer to have it labeled in a convenient and easy to manage fashion. Okay, so I want this force to be applied in the x direction, but I want it applied into the object, so I'm going to make it negative x. So what kind of value would be good? I believe our project uses something like 400. That's fine. I'm gonna do like, I don't know, 300 seems good. I'm using a comma here after the 300, but I'm pretty sure you don't need that, although I haven't tried it without it, so I'm just gonna do it the way I'm familiar with. And you don't have to give it a force in the Y direction. I'm just going to do it, just for coolness sake. So let me give it a negative 15, negative 10. Yeah, let's keep it at negative 10. That seems pretty simple. And 0 for the Z. No moments. Let's just keep it simple. And okay, so we take that. And now we select application region. Now, if you had done a distributed load, I noticed that those are a little more difficult to set up. I'm not exactly sure how to do them. But for this one, it seems pretty simple. You have your geometric entities, you just click the thing you want, and Viola. But before you click it, notice that when I try to hover over this face, it doesn't actually let me select the face. It only lets me select the whole entire object. This is really inconvenient. So I'm going to try to zoom in and see if I could fix that, but I know it's not going to help. So see, it's still selecting the whole object. Now you're probably wondering, oh man, now I'm going to have to do that whole solid 1.15.1 thing. No, don't worry, you don't have to do that. There is a very simple and very useful tool that lets us select only faces or whatever. Notice these buttons here on the side, which you've probably seen a bazillion times but never knew what they were for. These buttons let you specify what you want to select. So in our case, we're going to select a surface. So just click the surface. There's also edges and points and all that other stuff. But we just want to select the surface. So now you see, as soon as I click that, now it lets us choose surfaces. Perfect. So we click on this guy. It's solid 1.3 apparently. Then make sure you remember to hit add. Okay, cool. Now it's added. Okay. And now we're back to this force window. Notice it still hasn't added our force, so now we need to hit apply. And Viola, the force appears here, and it's also right there. And for some reason, Patran doesn't always use whole numbers for things, so it just added all these digits to it. I'm not sure why. I don't really like that, so... Oh, come on, open. Okay, I guess I'm going to have to do it this way. Okay, so go to input data. I don't like that point, whatever that is. So I'm just going to make this a different number. Hopefully it'll work better and be more exact. I mean, there's really no reason for me to do this, but you know what? I don't like programs that keep constantly not doing what I want them to do. Okay, so apparently it still wants to give me a different number. Alright, you know what? I'm just going to fight this program now. I know 400 worked in our project, so I'm going to make it 400. Yes. And now it disappears completely. Oh, perfect. Oh, how good. Alright, I guess it must have forgotten our application region, yeah. Alright, let's reapply this thing. Yes. And it's still not a whole number. I have no idea what's wrong now. This is so weird. I mean, I had this similar thing happen to me once before, but this is just persistent. Wow, it just doesn't go away. Okay, I have... Oh man. Alright, let's do something special. Alright, let's do a 0.0 on here. Let's see if that helps anything. Application region. Yeah. Alright, let's do this. And it didn't help. Wow. Okay, well, you know what? Forget it. It is what it is, so we'll just keep it that way. Alright, so we applied a force to this thing. Oh, you know what? I am just being so silly. I figured out what the problem is. Because I put a force in both the x and the y direction, and the thing that it displays here is the magnitude, so obviously it wouldn't give me a whole number. Ha ha. Oh, wow, okay. Well, alright. I guess this is what happens when you're trying to work on something late at night. Alright. So, okay. Alright, what do we want to do? Alright, the thing I forgot to anchor it. I am going to anchor this thing now, and I'm gonna try to give it some like fancy looking anchoring thing, just so it's more or less reminiscent of what we have in our project. So I'm actually going to anchor it at this chamfer here, right here, and at this face right there. Why do I want to do that? Actually, no. Let me see. Where else can I anchor it? That would be interesting. I mean, I could anchor it. Oh, you know what? This would be a cool idea. Let's anchor it at the hole, and this way it'll actually look like an object that's been attached by a screw or something. Oh, but wait, I already put a force here, so that would be so close to it. Oh yeah. Well, yeah, that's not going to look good because the force is right there, so it's not going to really make that much. It's like it'll have pretty much null effect because it'll be anchored so close to it. Yeah, let's. You know what? No, let's just do it. Let's do it just for kicks and giggles. Why not? Let's attach it to the hole, and that will make it look like this part was screwed in, I don't know, to some fixed location or whatever. And then if you apply a force very close to the this screw joint right here, we'll see what happens to it. That'll be interesting. Why not? Okay, so I hit this displacement constraint button, and then I want to okay, so this is creates displacements and it's nodal. That's all good. That's what we want. We want this default. Perfect. Let's say this is threaded what's it called when you have a threaded hole for a bolt? What's the name for that? Okay, I'm not sure. I'll just call it threaded hole. Whatever. Input data. Alright, so we want it to be fixed for translation. Yes. So it does not translate 0, 0, 0. And now, ideally, I would have wanted it to be fixed and not rotate. I'm sorry, fixed for translation, but not for rotation. That would be perfect, but unfortunately, that will only happen if we select an edge. As soon as you select a whole face, it automatically gets fixed for both rotations and translations. If you fix the translation, it fixes everything. So that's not so by fixing the translation, it's also going to fix the translation for us, unfortunately. So it's not exactly going to function perfectly like a screw hole. In order to make it a hole that something can pivot around, we would actually need to put a little edge in the center or something. And I'm not exactly sure how to do that. I tried to do a similar thing before, just got horribly messy, and I never figured it out. So, yeah. So we'll just forget about that, and we'll just fix it, and just, like, you know what, pretend like it's actually doing what we want it to do. Okay, so I fixed the translations, and the rotations are going to be taken care of automatically, so because we just fixed it, we constrained it completely. So, alright, let's select application region. I want to select all these little faces here. Oh, it doesn't let me select more than one at a time. So I'm going to add this one, select another one. Yeah. Okay, so now we selected everything. See, the whole thing is selected. We hit OK. Oh, one thing to notice here is notice that, like, remember how I was showing you before you could do, for example, surface 1 space surface 2 space surface 3. This thing is doing the exact same thing. It's doing solid 1.1, which is a surface, space 1.12, space 1.13, space 1.14, etc. So that's exactly what it's doing, is it's using the spaces to indicate that there's more than one thing there. Whoops, what did I do just now? Oh, that was bad. Okay. I think we're good. We're alive. Okay, good. Alright, let's hit the apply button. So it adds the threaded hole. It constrains the threaded hole. Notice the little constraint symbols that it's got now. Alright, everything seems pretty good. Alright. Let's, I'm sorry, I hit the Alt button, so it showed you the Alt on thing, but I actually meant to hit the Control button. Alright. Yeah, there it is. Okay, that looks good. So now this thing is anchored like so. Alright, now here's the important things for our project. We're going to go to meshing, and in our project we're since we have a very limited amount of nodes that we can work with, only 5,000, we're going to need to do some fancy meshing techniques, which I'm about to show you. Okay. Alrighty, let's get started. So, again, I prefer this menu over here, but some pictures, I'm just going to show you what these pictures are because they're good for reference. So what we're going to do first is we're going to tell it exactly where to put our meshes. Exactly how to split this up when it makes the mesh. The reason we want to do that is because it'll allow us a high degree of control for having very very fine meshes in places of high stress concentration, and having rather coarse meshes in places where we don't really care because the stress concentration is low anyways. So these buttons here are what allow you to do that. These are the mesh seeds, and notice we have 4 types. We're only going to use these top 3. The first one is a uniform mesh. Notice uniform mesh seeds. Notice all of the red dots are equidistant from each other. The second one is one-way biased. Notice there's more points on this side as opposed to the other side. And the third one is the two-way bias. Notice that there is more points on the edges than there is in the center. So I'm just going to start off with the basic one, the uniform. So notice when I click it, this gets set to create mesh seed uniform. So here it's very simple. It tells you this little diagram explains to you how your seeds are going to be spaced out, and you have 2 options. You can either specify the exact number of elements that you want, and elements are between each mesh seed. Between every 2 mesh seeds, you have 1 element between them. So, for example, if you specify an even number of mesh seeds, an even number of elements, it'll give you an odd number of mesh seeds. So, like for example, if you specify 2 elements, then it'll give you 3 seeds. So you have 1 at the beginning, then 1 in the center, and 1 at the edge. So let me just show you how that's going to look, just so it's not confusing. So let me go on this edge right here. So we selected this thing, and I'm going to keep auto execute enabled because we're going to be clicking a lot of edges, and it's just going to be a little bit of a pain in the butt to have to go back and forth and hit apply every time. So I'm just going to keep that enabled. Okay, so I set this to 3, and I'm going to click this edge right here. Notice that it created, we told it to create 3 elements. So here we have 1, 2, 3, but the number of points is 4 to constrain all those 3 things. So this is the only reason I'm harping on this point right here is quite often you're going to want to put a node in the center, especially when you're doing something like a two-way biased. And you'd expect an odd number, when you put an odd number here, that it'll give you a point in the center, because odd numbers, that's how they are. They have a number in the center. But it's actually going to give you an even number of these little node things. And you're going to be like, whoa, what happened there? That's okay. That's just because the thing that you're specifying is the elements and not the actual number of, not the seed locations. So let me set this to 2, just for argument's sake. Now, you know how before we used to always delete things before we'd add something new? As it happens, when you're doing mesh seeds, you don't need to do that. It takes care of it for you automatically. So I set this number to 2. If I click this now, it'll just ask me to confirm that it already exists and I want to overwrite it. Okay, I hit OK. Now, don't rotate your screen yet. Check this out. You notice that now you have these 3 mesh seeds, but you can still see your old ones as black. Well, if you remember what I was talking about a few minutes ago, whenever you delete something, it gets turned to black. So this just signifies that those are the seeds that we used to have, and these yellow ones are the new ones. And as soon as we either refresh our graphics or rotate our screen or something, the black ones are going to go away. So don't get freaked if you see those. They're useful for being able to see how you change your mesh. So, like for example, if you change the number of elements, these are quite useful for seeing how that change affects the rest of your model. I mean, how that change is different from what it used to be. So I'm going to set this to 10 now, because I'm actually going to put the right amount in for what we're going to be working with now. So I'm going to hit 10, yes, and if I'm going to rotate the screen, you can see that the black ones go away. Okay. So now, you don't have to put these mesh seeds everywhere, but I generally find it nice to specify exactly how many I want. So I'm going to put them along all of the edges. Okay, now, so I use 10. Now, I want to put some on this back edge as well, right? But notice that when I put it there, the spacing is different, because although I specified 10, I specified exactly 10, so since this edge is longer, now the spacing is different. I guess this is okay sometimes, but the problem is it's going to give you very high aspect ratio shapes. So if you remember from class, high aspect ratio is when one side, like for example, a rectangle is very high aspect ratio because one side is much longer than the other. So like the vertical side is much shorter than the horizontal side or something like that. So that's what high aspect ratio is. And high aspect ratio is pretty bad for trying to make an accurate mesh. So we're going to want to keep our little mesh seeds to be roughly the same size, because what's going to happen is, let me zoom in on this a little more. Oops, I'm sorry, not Alt, I mean Control. What's going to happen is when we actually make the mesh, the model is going to fill in the places between our mesh seeds and create little mesh elements out of it. So if we were to leave it the way it is, now it will have pretty high aspect ratio. So what we're going to do instead is we added our 10 and we like the spacing on here. So now we just kind of visually look and say, hey, this looks almost like a 0.4 of an inch. So now let's go to edge length, and instead of defining number of elements, we're going to define the exact length that we want to be between the seeds. So now if we click on here, well, we notice it's pretty close. It's off by a little bit. I guess 5 would have... No, I'm sorry. This is the new one, so 0.3 would have been closer. So let's go to 0.3. And yes, hit apply. Okay, now we see that this yellow one is right where the black one used to be. It looks wrong because the black is up here, but remember the black only shows you the very last change. So this is actually almost exactly correct to where it used to be. And we can compare it by sort of like, rotating our view and lining up the old points with the new ones that we have. And we see that it's almost exactly right. So let's add this here as well, just for consistency. Whoa, that's not what I wanted. I think I hit the wrong thing. But I guess it doesn't matter because I'll just undo it as soon as I get to the other one. Okay. So now, alright, so this is the thing that we wanted to fix though, because remember how it was off space, how the spacing was messed up, and it was creating some high aspect ratio shapes for us. I accidentally already clicked it, so it looks correct now, but if it hadn't been clicked, the spacing between these would have been much bigger. So what I'm going to do is just click this now, just for argument's sake, because that's what I originally wanted to do. And we notice that these are now very regular shapes that it'll be. I mean, it's still a little high aspect ratio because this is still a rectangle, but at least it's not like, torqued in a weird way that it's at least it's more regular now, and so we'll just let Patran deal with its aspect ratio-ness, whatever. It'll be able to work with this much better than if it was like some weird shape, like the way we had it before. Okay, so now I added these to it, and this is all good. So yeah, we'd probably want to jump on ahead, but I just want to point something out. This is a very long straight section that doesn't really have anything important happening to it. So we don't actually need these many points here. The important places to have the points would be at this face down here, because this has got a lot of like stuff going on around this area. But we don't really need too many points up here because there's no load up there. So that's why it's useful to have a one-way bias. So I'm just gonna, I know I wasted a lot of time putting these things here, but I'm just gonna, get rid of them and just show you the one-way bias. So in this drop-down menu, we can go to delete. Here we can select mesh seeds, and it wants a curve list. I just want to delete all of them. So I select everything, hit apply. Okay, now they're gone. Okay, yeah. So I guess that was kind of a waste of time, but at least I was able to show you those the uniform mesh. Now we're going to work with the one-way bias. So notice when we have one-way bias selected, all these blue lines appear and it looks like a horrible mess. But these blue lines are actually very useful. Notice that these lines are in fact little arrows, and it's kind of hard to see. Well, you can sort of see their tails appearing as I move it, and it kind of disappears. Oh, here, look. Okay, now I can see it. Okay, notice this arrow is pointing down. Okay, this arrow is very significant. The arrows correspond to this diagram here. So what it says is, notice this arrow right here. This arrow, it corresponds to the arrow that's right here. And so what it's telling us is, at the base of the arrow, well, I mean, not necessarily the base of the physical arrow, but in the direction that's at the start of the arrow, the distance between the nodes is going to be called L1, and at the far end, the direction that the arrow is pointing to, the distance between the elements is going to be L2. So what that means is the distance between the mesh seeds on this side of the line, on this side of the edge, will be different from the one on this side of the edge. So we're going to be able to define a very close mesh right here with very small elements on this side and rather coarse large elements on that side. Okay? Now there are two ways to do it. If you want to, there are two options again like before. We can either specify the exact number and the ratio of L1 to L2, or we can specify the sizes of L1 and L2 and just have it fill it in with as many elements as we want. Now, I personally hadn't used this before until I found it just like a little while ago, so I'm rather excited to try it. So I'm going to use this one. But before, when my teammates and I were working on this, we basically used this one right here. And sort of like, we picked a number that seemed like it would work and guessed a ratio, and if it didn't work, if it didn't look nice, we just went in and changed one of these numbers and just tweaked it until we finally got something that looked reasonable. But this seems a lot more convenient. So, okay, L1. Okay, so according to the picture, L1 is at the base of the arrow. So L1 would be defining the spacing up here. So here we want it to be very big. So let's just do it 0.5. No, 0.5 is too big. Let's do it 0.25. So this would be 1/4 of an inch, about yay long right here. And on this end, let's make it 100 times more accurate. So we'll do 0.025. Is that 100 times? No, that's only 10 times. I'm sorry. Divided by, yeah, that's only 10 times. Let's make it 100 times more accurate. 0.025. Oh yeah, this is going to be uber accurate. I mean, this might be a little bit of an overkill, but let's just go for it. Yeah, alright. Notice how the spacing is very large over here and gets very, very tight at this end. Although I actually, I do agree this is a bit of an overkill, so let's just make it 0.1. So it'll be 25 more times accurate. And I guess you can't really see a difference because they're so close anyways. Alright, let's just go for 10 times more accurate. Why not? Alright, that's a little better. They don't look quite as crazily close to each other. And we add another one here. Okay, very good. and yeah, perfect. Alright, so I'm going to apply the same concept to this line right here and right here. And obviously, if you wanted to, you should keep an eye on the aspect ratios of these things. I'm not going to bother with it at the moment. And I think, you know what, I think it's no cause for concern. I think this will work just fine without that. Alright, so now let's put these meshes everywhere else. I'm just sort of going to blaze through this a little bit. But before I do that, let me show you the two-way bias. So the two-way bias, again, very similar, gives you L1 and L2. You notice, though, there is no arrow because it just says, hey, I don't care which way you're pointed. I know that on the outside it's going to be one thing, on the inside it's going to be another thing. So let's do that. Okay, so the mesh size at these ends right here was 0.025. So just for consistency, I'm going to keep it the same. And the thing in the center, you know what? Let's just put that as 0.1. And now the place where I want to put this is right in here. I want to put it on this edge. The reason I want to put it on this edge is because I care about the loads around these places here where the forces are applied. And I also care about the loads close to this hole. But the loads here in the center is just a solid piece, so it's not really going to do anything too, cool in there. So I'm just going to do it like this. Notice it was closely spaced here as it approaches the hole, and it's closely spaced here where the force is. But in the center, it's rather loose. It's rather wide here. I'm going to same thing here, and here this area is so tiny that I'm just going to make this a uniform mesh. So this is going to be uniform, and I want the step size to be 0.1. No, I'm going to do 0.05. Between this used to be 0.1 up here, and this was 0.025. So between them is 0.5, right about. Yeah. Oh, look at that! It looks very nice. Very sort of. Whoops! What happened there? Yeah, okay. So yeah, this looks nice. Alright, now you also want to put some of these things around your fillets, and I don't really think that fillets need to have anything too fancy about them, so I'm just going to use the same uniform thing. The one thing that I would suggest, though, is making sure that the spacing that you use is similar to the spacing on either side of it. So on this side, I know we used 0.025, and on this side we used 0.5. So of course it can't be exactly the same. So I'm just going to go for something. I mean, of course it can't be exactly the same because there are two different values. So I'm just going to go for something in the middle. It's halfway between 0.25 is 0.5 is like 0.375, I believe. Might be doing my math wrong, but that's halfway between them. That should be good. Of course, you don't really need it to be that accurate, but I just like to be accurate with my stuff, so I'll just do it that way. Alright, and now on this outside one, it just so happened that we used 0.025 here and 0.025 here as well. So just so that everything is consistent, I'm going to set this to 0.025. And yep, there we go. Now it's all perfect and uniform. Now one of the things you could have done is if you had a size of 0.5 and 0.25, you could have just done a one-way biased and just set one to be 0.5 and 0.05 and the other to be 0.025, and that would have taken care of your problem. I don't know. I didn't want to mess with it, so I just did the easy way out. Okay, now the other important thing is this hole. The hole is going to be the place where it's deforming the most because that's where it's being anchored. That's where we put the fixed edges. So of course we're going to need to have some nice elements around that. This 0.25, that looks decent. We might want to give it a little more accuracy if it doesn't work well or if it's doing some crazy things. But for now, let's just keep it this way. Alright. Now, you notice that this whole time that I was putting in these mesh seeds. I was only doing them on the outside, but actually I would recommend putting them on the inside edges as well, the ones that span across in the Z direction, because sometimes stuff is going to be happening there, especially close to the very edge of the surface. So like at this corner where you're having this line intersecting the circle, there's going to be some fancy stuff going on there, I imagine, because I've seen similar things in other projects that we've done. So I'm just going to put some of these meshes here and here, but notice we don't need it to be uniform. We don't need all these points in the center because we only care about the outside. So I'm going to do a two-way biased again. On the outside, I'm going to do it 0.25, just like we were doing it before. And on the inside, it's 0.1. There we go. That looks good. But I'm kind of interested why this spacing in my circle is so much bigger. Let me just see something. What did I do? It's 0.25, yeah. The spacing just looks a whole lot wider. Oh, if I rotated it, we can see that it's the same. Alright, never mind. Yes, so everything's fine. It's just that the angle that we were looking at, it looked like the spacing between these points was a whole lot bigger than the spacing between those, but it's actually not. Why do I keep hitting the wrong buttons? What do I want to do? I want to zoom out. Okay, here we go. So by the same logic, I'm going to apply some meshes, some of the seeds around these edges as well. And for these edges, it's actually important because that's where the force is applied. So I don't really care about the center in these things quite as much, so I'm going to make this 0.15. But I do care about the edges, the corners, because that's usually where fancy stuff happens. Okay, so I added all these. Again, same logic for these ones. And okay, zooming out too much. Alright, so add it here. And on this face, we really don't need very many nodes here at all because there's no force right there. And so I would recommend just making it uniform and just giving it some really low value, like 2 or 3 or something like that, or nothing at all, and just let it do its own thing. But the reason I'm going to put stuff here actually right now is because towards the end of the project, I'm hoping to put another force in here just to make it fancy looking. So I'm just gonna do this like as if there were a force, even though there isn't a force right now. And it's probably not going to be very interesting for you to watch me do all these things because there's no new information. So I'll just pause the video for now, and I'll come back when I've put all these things in throughout the whole thing. Alright. Okay, hello everyone. So I just finished putting in these holes. I'm sorry, not the holes. I just finished putting in the mesh seeds. Yes, okay. And we notice there's a lot around this edge right here because, like I said, I'm planning to put in a force right there later. And I actually goofed a little bit just now, I realize. I kept these as one directional, although they should be two-way biased. So I'm just going to quickly fix that. I don't really care about the sizes too much, so let me just put that and that. And let's just hope that it's not going to overwhelm Patran with having too many edges. Too many nodes for it to handle in our student edition. Okay, let's put this as like that. Oh, you know what? I put so much space in there. I don't like this because actually later I'm going to show you how to cut some more holes and see what happens to it. So let's just put these back with the anticipation that we're probably going to cut some holes and stuff. Oh look, I just realized if I turn this thing upside down, it looks like a little penguin. Or a giraffe or something. That's cute. Anyways, let's get on rolling. So, okay, we created all these seeds, and the whole reason for having created these seeds is so now we could create a mesh. So you can either hit this solid button right here, or you can do select everything you want here. I would actually recommend hitting the solid button because it sets up a couple things for you. But I mean, I guess it's not really that big of a difference. If we had gone from mesh seeds where we would select mesh. Here we just have to make sure to select solid, and then under solid we have these options. We have this iso mesh, but we're not going to do that. We're going to do tet mesh, and for this we're going to set it to tet 4. The reason we have to set it to tet 4 is because tet 10 actually creates more nodes. So we don't want to create all those extra nodes. We want to keep our nodes down to as low as possible. So we're going to use tet 4. Now notice the other thing is this node ID right here. The way we know how many nodes we have is by our node ID. We know that the node ID that it's showing here is always one more than the amount of nodes that we have. Because right now we haven't created a mesh, we have 0 nodes, so node ID is at 1, which means that the next node that it's going to create is going to have an ID of 1. Okay, anyways, so this will give us a very ballpark estimate of exactly how many nodes we have. Okay, so the most important things here are input list. This is where we tell it what solid we're going to be creating our modes around. Now, if you accidentally set this as surface, notice it says surface list. If you see surface list, you know automatically that you're in the wrong thing. You want to be in the solid. Alright, so to do this we select the solid 1. Notice it gave us a number for the automatic calculation. The automatic calculation is actually generally pretty good. I mean, I personally like it because usually it gives you a number that will have less nodes than the 5,000, at least in my experience, unless your mesh is just like, just super heavy. Like mine looks like it's probably going to be over 5,000 because I put so many of these mesh seeds so close together. Okay, we'll see how it works, but let's just keep this on automatic calculation. But it's the good thing about this global edge length is if you uncheck it and you put your own number in here, it allows you to have a fudge factor to control how many faces you're how many nodes you're ultimately going to have, because it tells you what the maximum edge length is by default, the default maximum edge length. Or maybe it's not the maximum, it's just an edge length. But anyways, it tells you what the default value is. So that allows you to sort of, by tweaking with that, it'll give you different sizes of your elements, and the different sizes, of course, correspond to how many nodes you're going to have. Okay, so, alright. I kind of got distracted there because I realized I was missing a line, so I went into my pause mode and put that in there. Oh, and again, I'm missing another line, so I'm going to pause this again. Okay, yeah. By this time of night, I'm usually a perfectionist. I guess my brain just sort of is like, oh, I'm just too tired to, let something go, so I'm just going to have to go and fix it until it works. Yeah. Anyways, so, okay, I fixed that last edge. Yeah, so now it's good. Okay. Alright, okay. Yes, what are we talking about? What were we talking about? Oh, okay, we were back here under mesh. Okay. Alright, so we're in mesh, and we told it we're going to keep automatic edge length calculations, whatever. And so pretty much we don't need to do anything here except hit apply. And now we wait for some time, and voila, it explodes in purple color. This looks really crazy, but as soon as you refresh your view, you actually see that it's just normal. Yeah, okay, so now, just for argument's sake, we're going to zoom in on some of the areas of interest. Like you see here where this mesh size is big. Where we had large sizes between our seeds, we have large meshes. And of course here where we had very tight mesh seeds, we're going to have tight edges as well. We're going to have tight, what are these called? Elements or whatever. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, that's that. Notice it looks really jagged and stuff like that. That's because now this thing is not smooth anymore. It's actually made up of these tiny little faces that it created with the mesh. So if the point I'm trying to make is, if we can see its jaggedness with the unaided eye, as right here, then it's clearly not completely accurate. So that's why we want to try to add as many faces as our computer could handle. And unfortunately, due to the 5,000 node restriction on Patran for students, this is pretty much as best as we're going to get. So notice I'm at 4,000. If I wanted to, I could tweak this number a little bit, like let's cut off the 6 on that, apply this, and see if we can get closer to 5,000. Oh yeah, look at that, 4,500. So see, that's much better. Well, I mean, not much better, but it is better because now we have more of these faces to work with, so that's good. Alright, I'm probably not going to bother trying to get as close as I can. The closest I've ever come was having the node ID be at 5,002, which means I had exactly 5,001 nodes. One node more than the maximum allowed. I was like, oh man, so close, but if it was one node less, it'll be like epic, but one node more means I can't use it. So unfortunately, I had to tweak the number some more, and the closest I was able to come was, I believe, within 40 nodes of the maximum. I think one of my friends might have beat me, though. But anyways, you know, I guess that's what you do when you spend like 7 hours at Marston for like 2 days in a row, is you get bored and start tweaking your edge lengths to try to squeeze out as much performance as you can. Anyways, alright, so back to this thing. Okay, so now you notice these seeds haven't gone away and it looks really annoying. But the cool thing is, as soon as we hit analysis, boom, they turn black, which means as soon as we make any movement, they disappear. Look at that, now we could perfectly see our mesh. Now, so right now we have it as solid, but if we wanted to, we could make it wireframe. And so now we just see only our mesh. And this looks kind of cool. And we'll find that this is actually pretty convenient sometimes, although today my friends and I discovered another cool little trick that makes this obsolete, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Like right now it doesn't make any sense, of course, but when we get to that point, I'll show you why wireframe is useful, and then I'll show you another trick that is even more useful than wireframe. Okay, alright, so now here we're under Analyze, so we want to click Entire Model. Here we want to give it a job name. Now typically this is the name of your file, but I actually forgot to show you something. So okay, alright, so I'm going to show you something else in a moment, but for now let me just explain this, and it might not make sense why this is useful, but it will when I explain the other thing. So for the job name, I recommend putting some sort of _1 or something like that. And the reason this is important is because when you when you're working on a big project, it's good to save changes, a bunch of changes throughout. Patran auto-saves things, so if you've saved your project only once, and you expect that if something goes wrong, you could just return to your save, that's not going to happen, because Patran most likely auto-saved since then. And you might be able to go back a little bit, but most likely you're not going to be able to go back much more than one change or two. So it's very important to be making saving copies as you go. And we can do saving copies by using this Save Copy button. And now the reason it's important to give your job names a sort of digit to identify them is whenever you save a copy, if you save that copy to a different folder, your job name in that copy will still have the same name as it did before, but because you saved your copy to a different folder, it'll give you a horrendous error about not being able to find the job. Because it's like, hey, I know what the job name is, but I'm looking in my folder and it's not there, and the reason it's not there is because you saved your copy to a different folder. And now saving copies to a different folder is actually a really great idea, but just make sure to keep these job names with numbers. And having these numbers here will very easily show you, oh, hey, look, I'm looking at an old version of my job I mean, the job that I'm looking for is an old one, and so I just need to make a new job. And having these numbers here will cue you into the fact that you're looking at an old job. So whenever your program crashes and you're like, oh my god, why is this not working? You could look at it and you see, oh, that's because it's just looking at the old job from before I saved my copy, you know. So yeah, I would highly recommend keeping that here. But before we do anything else, let me show you how to save copies, because that is like really, really important, especially if you're working on a project and you hit the wrong button and your Patran just like explodes in fiery chaos, and you're like, oh man, my computer just died, and I don't know, some alien walked into the room and shot you with a taser or something. I don't know, something bad happens. You're going to want to have a saved copy so you could go back and not lose quite as much work. So anyways, so you hit the save copy here, and it's going to offer to save it in the same folder as your original. That's perfectly fine. What might be a good idea is to have a new folder for your copies, just so your main folder isn't quite as cluttered. I mean, yeah, that could work. I mean, you don't have to do that. I'm not gonna. What did I just do? I did something crazy. I have no idea what I just did. Okay. Anyways, I did something. Oh wow. Oh wow. Okay. You're right. That was weird. All right. So apparently, moral of the story is don't try to delete the new folder that you just created. Yes. So, anyways, I'm just gonna save it in the same folder because I don't really care. So I'm gonna do _2, and so now _2 would mean that when I go to do it and I see job name as 1, but this file is 2, then I'll know, oh wait, these don't match up, I need to make a new job. Just sort of make it easy for myself to find issues when I run into them. And now, why did I call this 2 instead of 1? Because when I hit save, it's going to create this file, but the thing that I'm working in is still going to be the same. So like, it's not going to close the program that I'm in right now. So I'll still be working on demofile.db as opposed to demofile_2.db. Oh, P.S. on your computer, you're most likely not going to see the .dbs. The only reason you see it on mine is because I enabled extensions, and extensions are really useful. I love them, so I'm going to show you how to enable it on yours as well, just real quickly. So I'm on Windows 8.1, so I move my mouse to the upper right corner. I go to Settings. Here I have Control Panel. If you're on Windows 8, not 8.1, and you go up to the right corner, and you're in your Start menu, that's the weird thing. If you're in your Start menu, and you go to this corner and you go to Settings, you notice that, oh, it's actually not on mine either. Okay, well, you'll notice that there's no Control Panel. The way you get to Control Panel is you have to be viewing your desktop. If you're viewing your desktop, then when you go up here and to Settings, Control Panel is one of the options. Okay, so hit Control Panel. What we want to go is to Appearance and Personalizations, then Folder Options, and under View, we see there's all of these nice things here. Now notice I like to see everything, so I have Show Hidden Files turned on. I have all of the hide things turned off, and one of them is this hide extensions. Notice this guy right here? That's why you're able to see the .dbs on my files, even though on your files you're probably not going to see them. But I recommend turning off this hide extensions thing, because that's just really useful. You could like see exactly what kind of file you're looking at, because a bunch of files look very similar. You know, like I don't know, JPEGs look like other kinds of pictures, or Word documents look similar, and you know. This just is it's a very easy way to see exactly what files you're working with. So I would recommend turning that on. Turning that off. The hiding thing, turn it off. Okay, yeah. Anyways, so alright, so now we're ready to save this, and like I was saying, when you save this thing, it's going to save the file for you, but it's not going to open it. So the thing that you're going to be working on is still your original file. Okay, so now that I've harped on that for like 20 minutes, okay, so I saved that thing. I assume it's saved. I'm not going to bother looking at it. And so now this thing, okay, cool. We did this. We have a demo file 1. Okay, so now here's some important settings that you want to keep an eye on. You want your solution type, so right down here, to be set to linear static, which it is. So, okay, that's good. and you want your subcases. Okay, you want default, but what you want to double check is the output requests. Make sure that this box right here has this stress blah 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 thing. If it doesn't, then in your top list up here, scroll until you find it. It's not showing for me right now because I assume because it's already clicked. So I guess it probably just doesn't show it in both places. Or maybe because I have to switch one of these things to advanced or something. I'm not going to do that. Let's just keep it as basic. Okay, so anyways, the most important thing is that it's here. I don't know, I just for my own peace of mind, I like to double click it, just like, you know, to tell it, hey, program, you know, it's right there. Even though I'm quite sure that just having it in this box is enough. So, okay, hit OK. The other thing, no, actually that's everything. I hit apply. Okay, good, it's applied, everything is done. And, yeah, hitting apply is pretty important. I think once when I don't remember. Yeah, I just recommend doing it. Just, you know, just in case. Okay, after you hit apply, then you can hit cancel. Now all of the stuff that we want is already set correctly, I believe. So you can just hit the apply button. And it opens up this window. And it's just going, yeah. Okay, cool, it's done. It looks done, yeah. Some of my friends suggested that if you hear that you should keep the volume up on your computer when you're doing this. If you hear it beep during that, it means something probably went wrong. And I saw that happen to them a couple times, but it does not always mean that something's went wrong. Sometimes it beeps, but it's still able to work, so we're not exactly sure what this beep means, but it's just a warning. So if you're getting a beep, be prepared that it might not work, but maybe you're lucky and it does, because sometimes it does work. So, yeah, just wanted to point that out. So don't panic too much if you hear a beep, but just be prepared that you might have to go back to to one of the saved copies. Okay, alright, another thing. Okay, so now we go to attach XDB. Make sure that in our available jobs you have this demo file 1, and if your job name is not demo file 1, just click it. It'll get set to demo file 1, and now we just hit apply. Now, notice this little window down here. This window tells you stuff that's been happening. If you drag this up, it'll show you a list of a lot of things, and it's like so much information. But one of the most important things here is after attaching your XDB and hitting apply, notice it says end of attach result file. If it doesn't say this, if it says like right here, begin attach result file, if that's the only thing it says and it never says end and you've been waiting for it for like longer than like a minute, something probably went wrong. And though it's very difficult to know exactly what, like my friends and I had this issue a couple times, and it's just painful because it's really difficult to figure out what exactly is causing the problem. But one of the things that we found is that if you go back to meshing and you didn't use automatic edge length calculation, that might sometimes occasionally cause this thing to not say begin result whatever. Sorry about the down appearing. I just pressed down arrow because I thought it would scroll. Let me just put this back onto end. Yeah, there it is, end. Okay, so if it doesn't say end, if it just says it begins but never finishes, then one possible thing that you can try to do to try to fix it would be to hit this automatic edge calculation and just go through apply and analysis and stuff like that again. That might help. The other thing is sometimes this XDB not attaching is caused by having opened a copy of, like, you saved a copy and then your program crashed, and so you went in and opened that copy. So sometimes that causes the XDB not to work as well. I haven't really narrowed it down exactly what's causing it, but it's just like, I occasionally have it happen, and that seems to be one of the things that I was doing when it happened. So when that happens, just go back to your entire model and change the job name to like B or something like that. I'm sorry. First, what you want to do first is instead of analyze, you want to select delete. You want to delete your job. So you select it and go delete. And then you go back to analyze under the action, under this action drop down thing, analyze. And now you create a new job. I mean, I guess you could reuse the same name. I'm just going to make a new name. Now, just of course, make sure to check all these things, but I'm pretty sure on mine they're fine. Because, well, you know what, yeah, I'm not going to bother with it. Hopefully I'm not going to regret that later, but I think they're okay. I'll just leave them like that. Okay, so now we have available jobs. Okay, now we go to attach XDB. Now we have a new guy right here. And we can apply, attach it. Alright, perfect. So now we go, and now we see it says end of attaching results, so we're good. Alright, cool. So now we can go to actually results. Okay, and now in fringe deformation, notice it opened up this graphics window, which is something that I was playing with before when I changed the background color. So typically this wouldn't open up on yours. I think on yours it'll automatically open up to this fringe deformation thing. But if it doesn't, then just click the fringe deformation thing, you know. That's pretty simple, right? Alright, so things to keep in mind here. If these blocks are empty, then it means your XDB didn't attach right. And that's bad. So if it didn't attach right and you've already tried everything else, then go back to your analysis, XDB, and here select result file. This is like your last, like if everything else fails, then do the select result file and manually tell it to go to this demo file _1b .xdb. Now notice, see I have my extensions showing, so this is very convenient because I can see that this is an XDB file as opposed to just a DB file, which is your database. XDB is that result file that we want. Okay, so now we hit this, hit OK. Okay, I'm just going to apply it one more time. You know what? Why not? Okay, so alright, I applied it. I go to results. Oh, haha. Okay. So when I applied it just now, it actually created two of them. So notice all these are missing down here, but it's no cause for panic. The reason they're missing is because I applied two things. So now it's just like, oh, which one do you want? And since they're both the same thing, we can hit either one of them. I'm actually going to see if I can delete one. Yes, I can delete one. Or not, I can't delete it. I don't know. Okay, yeah, well... Alright, so I guess moral of the story is don't try to attach more than one XDB file at the same time. But if you get this, don't worry about it. Just keep in mind that the A2 is probably your most latest one, so let's use that one. Alright. Okay, so now here's another important thing in this video. Let me just double check something. I am recording, aren't I? Yes. Okay, good. Alright. For a second there, I questioned whether I hit the record button and was just talking for like half an hour to something that wasn't recording. That would have sucked. Okay, alright. So this other important thing is, this is the fringe result and this is the deformation result. That like means nothing. But basically, the thing you select here is going to be what, you know how in class she had this like little rainbowy bar appear inside here? The thing you select in this box is going to dictate what this rainbowy bar is. Deformation result is the thing that you select here will be showing will actually change how the picture looks. I mean how your object looks. And now that, whoops, notice I accidentally pressed Control or left clicked instead of middle mouse button clicking. And that caused this weird thing to appear. This is like a selection circle thing. You could use it to select stuff, but it's kind of a little annoying because you don't really know how to turn it off. I know how to turn it off, but I want to try something that I haven't tried before, so maybe it'll help. So I'm going to try hitting escape and see if that turns it off, but if it doesn't, I'll just show you the real way that I turn it off. So hit escape. Nope, that did not help at all. Okay, so the way I turn it off is I double click and it goes away. Now normally if you had done this and you did it around your object and you double click it, see it selects a bunch of stuff. So then you have to click off to the side somewhere and then rotate your screen to get it to go away. Okay, anyways, so that's that. Alright, so the first thing, let's take a look at some displacement results. So I want the numbers on the right hand side to tell me the displacements, and I also want to actually see the displacements on my model. So I select displacement translational and displacement translational. Now there's X, Y, Z components. For the purposes of our project, in my opinion, magnitude is more useful because that just gives us like the most that it's going to be. Like the X, Y, Z, like the X could be small, but the Y might be huge. So if we do the magnitude, it'll give us like the actual magnitude of it. So that's really useful. Alright, so let's hit apply. And wow, we see that it deflects. Wow, but this is really crazy looking. Wow. This is actually even more awesome than I thought. So we notice we applied a really humongous force to this thing, but because it's being fixed at this circle here, it looks almost like somebody took a hammer and just like smashed this thing with the hammer. Oh man, this looks so cool actually. Trust me, I did not plan for this to look that cool, but alright, anyways. So the circle is perfectly fine because you constrained it, but everything around it just got mushed. Wow. Okay, cool. Oh, notice it's a little asymmetric. I'm guessing that that's because when it creates the mesh, it doesn't worry about symmetry. It just tries to fill it in, just starting from one location and travels along filling it in. So because our mesh wasn't perfectly small, like you see these pieces are pretty big, the asymmetry that was caused by that created this thing, caused this thing to like go off axis, which I guess doesn't really matter too much, but you know, that's just one thing to keep in mind. And the other thing that you notice is the solid is interfering with our colors. Like we can't really tell what colors are in here because the solid's there, and that's a pain in the butt. And so that's what. So remember, like a little while ago, I said turning this thing to wireframe will be very useful. That's exactly what I was talking about. If we turn this thing to wireframe, well, the whole thing went away, but we can just hit apply and it'll show it again. Now we see the actual colors. Unfortunately, this thing is blue, so blue on blue, you can't really tell it. You can't really tell where the wireframe is, but we don't really care about the wireframe, we just care about the color. And we see that this is clearly blue here. So you see wireframe is a whole lot more convenient than the solid is, at least in this example. But wireframe still looks messy, and my friends and I, we were trying to figure out how to get this wireframe to go away completely. And it turns out there's actually a button for that. If we go over here to the right, you see these pictures are actually buttons. And you could click on them. Like this is an animated button, I'm pretty sure, although I haven't tried it. This is a fringe attribute, and this is something else that I haven't tried either. But this right here, this is what we want to do. So notice here, you got a lot of options here that you can play with, but the one that I want to show you is this show undeformed. That's this mesh right here. So look, this color here lets us change the color of our mesh. So we hit apply. Notice it's a white mesh now. Now I can actually see it a little better because this was blue, and so now white on it is going to look better. So this is one thing that you can do if you still want to keep your old wireframe. You can just set it to a color that doesn't interfere quite as much. Or, let me just put this back to blue, or you could hide your wireframe completely. So you can just do this, boom, and hit apply. Notice your wireframe is completely gone. Now, it still does this outline because that's your solid object. Your solid object is still there unless you delete it. So it's still going to show the solid object to you. Now, on yours, when you do this, you might actually see this. So hold on a second, let me apply this. You might see that. And the reason you see that is because when I did it on here, when I turned off the show undeformed, I already set it to show me only wireframe. But if you still have it on smooth shaded, then it will continue to be smooth shaded just without the wireframe. So just click the wireframe, and now hit this apply without show undeformed. And this is actually, you know what, I rather like it this way. And I think for my project, Well, I mean, I didn't do this in all of my screenshots, but when we found out how to actually do it, I'm probably going to make all my screenshots from now on like this, because now you can very easily see what color everything is, but you still have a sort of a faint little representation of where your original shape used to be. Another cool little trick with this, if you guys are interested, is let's just set this to white, and here are different line types. So if you change this to this dot kind of thing, watch this. It actually shows you the shape, but it's made out of dots, so it doesn't interfere nearly as much as it used to before, but now it gives us a very clear actual shape. Like, we can actually see where all the edges and stuff like that were, instead of just seeing some wireframes. So this is actually really nice too, and, you know, I'm tempted to make my project like that, but this is just maybe a little too epic for me. So, you know, it looks beautiful, but I'm just going to go on my project probably the simple route and just have it be completely missing. Like so. There we go. And yeah. Okay, so that's that. Alright, cool. We put a force on here and it looks cool. And yeah. Alright. Sorry, I'm losing my train of thought again. So we did that. We did the deformation. Okay. Alright, this is what I wanted to show you. Alright. So this deformation thing tells you our deformations, obviously, because that's what we did. We went to let's go back to the thing right here. All right, we chose deformation translation. So the bar on the right, which is picked by this box right here, shows what our maximum deformations are. Apparently in Patran, I have never seen black, so I'm not sure. Maybe it's just one tiny little point somewhere that's black that's really hard to see. But I just ignore it. And I say this right here is our maximum deformation. So you see our maximum deformation is now 0.0238 inches. Assuming we did everything in English units. And of course this is very convenient because we see exactly where this deformation is. So when this thing got impacted by the force, it like caused a tremendous amount of deformation, especially on these outside edges, which is pretty reminiscent of what you'd see if you struck a sort of a square kind of peg with a hammer or a sledgehammer or whatever. Like, I don't know if any of you have done any woodwork or carpentry, but this is actually pretty, you know, pretty authentic to what it will really look like when you hit something with a sledgehammer. Of course, it's a little exaggerated, as with all these simulation programs, so it's easier to see, but hey, yeah, that's pretty good. But the other thing we see is that due to the fact that this was done around this hole, it caused the whole shape sort of to shift and deform. So we see this large deformation here. And I'm actually surprised the red isn't over here. That's what I was expecting. I was thinking this is such a big moment arm that it would just cause it to deflect all this way out here and cause it to go red. But it's only green. So I guess, you know, that's 0.01 inches. You know, that's still pretty good. That's like half the maximum. So, yeah, it's pretty decent. Okay, so the other thing. Alright, so now we did this translational thing. Now let's do the von Mises for our stress concentration. Now there are two ways of doing the von Mises. I'm not sure which one is right, but one sounds a lot better to me than the other. So I'm going to show you both, but let you pick which one you want because I have no idea which one's right. So you can either do stress tensor, and stress tensor just sounds like something we did in class, so that seems pretty reasonable. And one of the options is von Mises, and of course there are a ton of other ones, but the default one is von Mises. So that's actually the one that I'm using for my project. But you notice there's also some sort of a stress invariant von Mises. Now, you know, we might have talked about this in class. I just don't remember, so I'm not 100% sure what a stress invariant is. And perhaps that's a shame on me, but, if you know what it is, then, I applaud you. That's good. I don't know what it means, and I haven't Googled it because it just sounds like, it sounds kind of weird. I'm like, stress invariant, what is that? So I'm just going with stress tensor and setting it to von Mises. Okay, so having set this thing in the box over here means that the values on this side are going to be the stress invariance. Now, you can actually set this to be your constant forces. Again, translational. And, that's cool. It seems like, oh, hey, if I have this thing as stresses, it makes sense for this thing to be forces, right? And yeah, to a degree it does. But you will see when you do your project, when you do this, it actually gives you a shape that's not at all. Like, it doesn't look like the physical shape at all. Like, the reason setting this to displacement translation is useful is because then you get to see what the object actually looks like when it deforms. But if you set this to constant forces translational, you don't see what the object looks like when it deforms. You see the stress concentrations being demonstrated as it's hard to explain. I'm just going to show it to you. And obviously, for the problem that I picked, it doesn't actually show what I wanted to show. That sucks. All right. Well, okay. In your project, if you do it like this, you will see that some of the attachments, it's not going to be flat and nice. It's actually going to be a spike that's like sticks out of your project, like it just goes like and sticks out to here, and it looks like, whoa, this thing just like exploded or something. But it didn't. It's just the way it demonstrates the thing. Okay, well, alright, this is cool. So this shows you the stresses, and let me just do it with translation. So with translation, this is what it looks like. Has your stress, and it's still showing you the stress tensor up here. Notice it's 4.1 times 10 to the 6 as opposed to times 10 to the minus whatever it was. Minus 2, I believe. And so the colors still correspond to here, but the shape is the actual shape. Well, I mean, it's not the actual shape, but it's more or less reminiscent of the shape that you would see in the real world. Whereas opposed to doing it this way, apply, there we go. We don't actually see the real world shape. I mean, this looks nice and clean actually. For the object, for the particular setup of this program, it actually looks very clean. So to be honest, I would actually prefer it this way for this particular project. But just just from prior experience, I know that in the project, it looks. What happened? I'm lost. Okay, in the project, I noticed that it looked nicer when you plotted stress tensor, but used the picture as displacement translational. Yeah, but I mean, just play around with that. Maybe the way you set up your project, it'll actually look nice when you do it this way. I don't know. Whichever. It's there. You can do whatever you want with it. Okay, so I've just ranted for a really, really long time about this one little thing. Okay, but moral of the story is I think we covered pretty much most of the things I want to talk about already, so that's good. Can't really remember anything else I wanted to cover. Oh, right, I wanted to cover, alright, so now we got this thing and we measured the forces. And let's assume that all the forces are within our bounds and whatever. We were able to design this part with the right fillets in the right places so that it can withstand whatever forces you need and have the proper characteristics, whatever kind of things, I mean, obviously not whatever, they're very important. But now the thing is like, okay, so we did that, but now we want to put a hole in there just to try to reduce the mass. And unfortunately, with the way I did it right now, putting a hole somewhere in the center isn't going to make any difference at all because the force is right here. So that's not going to make any difference. Actually, that'll be a great way to reduce mass because there's no force right here. So we could literally almost reduce the mass to infinity in this part because it's not going to make any difference at all. But that's trivial. So what I'm going to do is I am going to go to meshing, and before I make any changes to my geometry, before you make any changes to your geometry, make sure to always remove the mesh. You can keep your mesh seeds, because as soon as you make any changes, those just get deleted automatically. But for your meshes, and when you delete your, sorry, I just clicked a bunch of buttons while I was talking. I just wanted to point out that I am under meshes, and I selected delete mesh. And now here it's very important, don't do surface, do solid, because we created our mesh on the solid. If you do surface, it's not going to work because we didn't create any meshes on surfaces. Okay, sorry, so back to what I was saying. What was I saying? Oh, I was saying that if you leave your mesh seeds and you make some changes to your model that conflict with your mesh seeds, the mesh seeds get deleted and they're gone, and you don't have to worry about it. You just make some new mesh seeds later. But if you have your mesh and you make changes to your model, it gets pretty messy pretty fast. Because the mesh actually defines it, like what mesh does is it almost creates like new little elements for you. And so if you try to make changes to it, it's going to treat your mesh as little elements. So this actually, it's going to make some pretty significant, like, it's going to be in the way. It's going to be in your way. Like, for example, if you try to put a fillet on your model, when you have a mesh on it already, your fillet is going to look horrible and jagged because it's going to take the mesh that you have, and it's just going to deform the mesh to give you a fillet. But obviously, if you first make a fillet and then make a mesh, it's going to try to model the mesh to fit your fillet. But if your mesh is already there, and then you add a fillet on top of the mesh, it's going to shape your fillet to match your mesh, which you always don't want to do because the fillet's more important than the mesh. The mesh is supposed to do whatever the mesh is what's supposed to be like, oh, hey, I'll take this shape so you can have a perfect result. But if you don't remove your mesh, then it's there, and so everyone else has to deal with your old mesh. And obviously an old mesh is not going to correspond well to any new changes you make. So, alright, that's another long-winded way of saying delete your meshes before making any changes. Alright, yes, I feel like I am getting extremely long-winded. Yes. So this recording is already over 2 hours long. That's fun. So I'm just going to make this real quick. Alright, what I want to do is I want to add another load. So I want to go to force. I did force x1. Now I'm going to make a force in the y direction. And it's going to be... yeah, 1, okay. And for input data, I'm going to give it a crazy value. Something like, I don't know, like 1,000. No, 1,000's too much. Well, no, it's not too much. Why not? Let's keep it 1,000. Yeah, that would be cool. All right, let's give it 1,000, and I am going to, you see, when we apply this force, it caused the whole thing to deflect backwards this way. I want to apply a force now that'll cause it to go down. So it'll collapse it in and around itself. That'll be cool looking. So I'm going to put this in the negative y direction, and I'm going to apply it to this top face right here. So now you see this force is going to be pushing that way in the x direction, and this force is going to be pushing this way in the y direction. So this is going in the x this way, and the other one's going to y this way, and it's going to cause it to bend in a circle around the hole. That'll look pretty cool in my opinion. So now we apply this force right here. Oh yeah, this is going to be awesome. So now we go to meshing. Luckily we didn't change any of the shape, so all of our mesh seeds should still be there in the same places they were before. So now we can just do solid mesh and mesh the whole thing, you know. Everything should be the same because we didn't actually change the geometry, we just applied another force. So now we created this mesh. Recreated the mesh. It should be pretty much exactly the same thing because we didn't change any parameters. Go to analysis, apply. Do you want to overwrite? Yes, let's overwrite everything. It's doing this doohickey thingy. Yep, okay, it did that. Then we go to XDB. Okay, attach this XDB thing, something like that. Okay, now we go. Alright, let's see. I really want to see the displacements. These displacements are going to be cool, I think. Boom. Oh, wow, that was so unexciting. That was horrifically unexciting. I'm actually this is kind of strange, because the force here didn't change. Oh, you know what it is? You know why it looks so unexciting? Is because the thing that it models here, the colors are given in comparison to each other. So because this force is so huge compared to the force here, we don't see any deformations here. Because the deformations are, it's done on sort of like a comparison scale wise. So like this deformation is so huge that in comparison these ones are really small, so that's why we can't even see them. Oh, this reminds me. Oh, I'm so glad I did this. I forgot to show you one extremely useful thing. Sorry for the sidetrack. If you go up to viewing, there's this thing called select corners. This is like an awesome zooming tool. Like here, check this out. You can do select corners. Doesn't look like it did anything, but now if I click and drag my mouse, it lets me select exactly what I want to zoom in on. This is an awesome feature. I love this feature so much. Okay, yes. So it lets us zoom in. Come on now. What am I doing? Oh, here it is. So yeah, so you see, we can't see any deformation at all. In fact, it's blue. It's like it's almost as if there's no force here because the force is so small in comparison that it's like it's not even registering it. I mean, it's not even displaying it. It's not even displaying. I'm sorry, it's not displaying any deformations from it. Now let's go to stress tensor. Let's do it this way. Look at this crazy stress right there. And you notice my drawing looks really horrible, and you're probably wondering why it looks so horrible. It's because I didn't set this to wireframe. Okay, there it is. Now this is in wireframe. Now it looks a lot better. Yeah, this looks pretty cool actually. So we notice there's a lot of stress around. I keep hitting the wrong buttons. There we go. We notice, oh, look at all that stress around it. Wow, look, that thing got shredded on the inside. Look, see, this is the normal hole shape, and it just got demolished. It's like we told it to be fixed, but it's like, it looks like the force was so large in that area. Why can't I... Oh, man. Too late at night, I can't seem to control... come on. Keep hitting the wrong things. Oh, man. Okay, we can see that it just got brutally deformed in, like, you know, even though it was supposed to be fixed, it's like it's not fixed. It's just like, wow, look at this. This edge right here got so deformed, it looks like it's even sticking out from the model. I think this is like an inner edge. I think this isn't something that's on the outside. I think this used to be on the inside. It just got deformed to the outside. Wow, that's great. Oh, wait. Forget everything I said just now. I just totally, completely misinformed you. This is not displaying the deformations. This is displaying the stress tensors. Oh, okay. Well, then that makes perfect sense why it's so irregular and crazy like that. I'm sorry. Yeah, okay. What was I thinking? Yeah, this is the deformation. Okay, I just set it to the deformation now. And when we set the deformation, we see that there's no deformation right there. And... we see that all the circles are still, in fact, circles. Alright, perfect. Alright, the world is fine now. Yeah. To be quite honest, when I was looking at the other thing, I was really weirded out by that, but I tried to sound confident, to, like, you know, sound like I actually know what I'm doing. And to be perfectly honest, I had no idea what that was all about until I realized that this was set to constant force. Yeah, of course it makes sense now, but I was kind of like, oh man, this doesn't make any sense at all. But I can't tell them on the video that I don't understand what I'm doing. So I just gotta sort of like pretend like I know what I'm doing for this video, even though I was like completely clueless just now. Anyways, so I don't like this force being so big, so let's just go back to the loads and BCs. Now, since I already have this force here, I'm not going to bother with like deleting my mesh. I'm just going to go and edit the force. Okay, I guess I gotta do it this way. Let me set it to be the exact same thing, so that at least it'll be the same order of magnitude. And select application region, that's already selected, good. Alright, apply to changes, yes. Mesh, I didn't change. Analysis, let's redo the analysis. Alright, this video is officially at like over 2 hours now. So, yeah, fun times. Okay, so this finished. Sorry for making you sit through this horrendously long video. I hope you had some popcorn or something. Okay, so I just attached my XDB. Now I'm going to this thing, and let's go back to my displacements because that's the thing that I'm really interested in. Because it just looks so cool, yeah. Alright, here, apply. Man, disappointing. Yeah, even with the force being much less, because of this horrible moment arm. Well, I mean, I guess it's not horrible, but I mean, it's a big moment arm. Because of the giant moment arm, it just like completely dominates everything else. So I'm going to pause the video because I am interested in what it's going to look like, but I don't want to make you sit through me working out. So I'll just pause the video and show you the end result when I finally get them to be close enough values to where I can see both of them. Alright, see you in a few. Okay, so apparently persistence and perseverance wins in the end. So I just tried a bunch of them, and it turned out that the force that I needed on top was just 5 for it to be very visible. Like 10 was kind of visible, but I just went to 5 just, for the full effect. Okay, anyways, so here it is. So what happens is this thing deforms this way. We can see the outline of the original shape. So it deforms squash like that, and it also deforms squash like this. And because this force is kind of pushing it out here, we notice it deforms a little bit outside of the line this way. So this is cool because it shows you like where your deformations are. Alright, cool. And now we can check our forces. Stress tensor, let's go to here. Voila! We see there is a large force right here, but on top, the forces are very, very small. Why? Because it's just 5 whatever, So most of the forces here, but most of the deformation is caused by that. And so I guess this is very good for like analyzing your parts, because now, hey, you see this part right here can handle a lot of force without pretty much any significant deformation. But up here, even a very tiny force causes like a horrendous deformation. So when you're working on a project, I guess you could like put another force on it and see how it responds. I mean, I guess that might be overkill for what we're doing in our project, but like in the real world, I guess you could put another force on it somewhere else and see how it responds to that other force. Like here we put this force right here, and it's clearly creating a very, very distinct, significant effect in terms of the displacement. But putting a force here, it doesn't create hardly any effect at all. So, yeah. And I guess, of course that makes sense from a physical perspective. Cool, yeah, that's fun. Alright, so, I don't know, I think I'm done. I thought of something else to show you while I was doing this, but I kind of forgot. Oh, wait, no, I remember. Alright, the thing I wanted to show you is notice these numbers are really hard to see because of our light background. So, again, I just want to remind you to go to Preferences, Graphics, and change the colors to whatever you want. So let's just, I guess swapping colors wouldn't help. One of the things that I liked when I was playing around with this is setting it to vertical. And now, if you take a look, You see it has one color on one side and the other on the other side. Let's flip this. See, you could put a darker color here and a lighter color on the left, and now you can see all your numbers is fine. And I mean, I guess these things are important here too. Yeah, maybe, I don't know. But anyways, yeah, they tell you what your experiment is, so I guess they're kind of important. But the point is you can put a darker color here so you could see your things better. Or, I mean, you could even just set it to like one color. Set it to that. Let's see, apply. Yeah, see, black, and now you can see all the numbers very nicely. You know, originally when I was working on with this, I actually liked black at first. But then I sort of started experimenting with these color options, and I'm like, you know what, black is cool, but, you know, color gradients are cooler. Oh, P.S. This is one that I like, except not like that. I would like it like this. And no, again, swap colors. There we go. I like that. This looks stylish, you know? Yeah. Anyways, so that's that, and but some other cool combination. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Well, I probably don't even need to waste your time with this, but you know, this Alienware colors, by the way. I don't have any Alienware, but I wanted one, so I know their colors. Yeah, woo. Yeah, okay, alright, you know what, I'm just ranting at this point. I'm pretty sure I told you everything useful that I know. Oh, one other useful thing. Notice these forces, they can sometimes kind of be in the way. You know, if you're trying to take a good screenshot, and the screenshot you're just showing how the part bent, and you don't care about the forces or whatever. You can go to Entity Color Label Render thing. Oh no, I'm sorry. Entity color blah 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 blah. That's for like what solid number and what edge number you have, which is useful if you want to like find a particular edge. You could like turn that on and see what the edge name is or whatever. But I'm sorry. For the forces are under Display, Loads, BCs, Elements, and Props. So here, you notice that you have all these checkboxes. Just for argument's sake, I'll just hide all of them. I mean, that's probably what you're going to end up doing as well, because that's just convenient. And see, they disappear. And you probably saw that it was white. White is just, sometimes it highlights the mesh like that, so just pretend like it wasn't. The thing that just disappeared was the forces and not the white thing. The white was just like, you know, just like something Patran did for something else. Yeah, see, now it's got forces, and now if we hide it, boom, gone. And like, you can choose which you want to hide, forces or displacements or whatever, I don't know, it doesn't matter. And yeah, just, you know, go with that. I'm just going to display one quick other thing. I want to see what this looks like. Forces translational. Yeah, so see there's force there and hardly any force on top. Alright, cool. So, okay, cool. So that, I guess that wraps up the video. Oh, one other button that you might want to look at is this model tree. This is under home. It's got the model tree right there. It shows you like your materials and stuff like that. So this is kind of useful. It would be a little more useful if we could oh, these are cool. Checkboxes show you which things you see, which things you don't. Or maybe it disables them completely, I don't know. I actually haven't played around with this much, so I don't know. But yeah. This is cool. I mean, it's got stuff in it. You could play with it. You might be able to do something useful with it. I haven't done too much with it. Yeah. Alright. Alright, so I think that's it. Alright. Good night, everyone, or good morning, or whenever you watch this video. Hope this was a good use of like 2.5 hours of your time. Yeah. Woo. Have a nice rest of your semester. Enjoy finals, and if this video ever gets used for anything else, I guess don't enjoy finals. Enjoy whatever other work that you're doing right now. If this video actually gets watched by people online, hey, thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe, and like, you know, go on my Facebook and like hit me up and stuff, you know. That'll be cool. Alright, yeah, and if you've actually watched through the whole 2 hours, which, you know, is probably going to be like one or two people. I just want to congratulate you for like sitting through with me for so long and through all my ranting and whatever. Like, I mean, like, here's some applause for you, because I'm pretty sure most people would have quit after like the first half hour or an hour or so. Yeah. And so yeah, like, thanks, that's cool, like, you're a devoted person, awesome, thank you so much, and I hope this was a good use of your time and you learned a lot of awesome things. Yeah, okay, cool, alright, peace, bye, see ya folks, yeah, woo, fun, bye.